very good morning. You're watching Business Plus right here on News 9 Live. All the stories that made headlines over the weekend and early morning today, from Prime Minister Modi inaugurating the Surat Diamond Bourse, all the way to Go First finding a new bidder. Let's take a look at the headlines. Like I said, Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Surat Diamond Bourse yesterday. It's the world's largest trading office floor. And Raghuram Rajan, the former governor of RBI and former chief economic advisor to Government of India, has come out and said that India, despite all the hullabaloo about being a developed nation, is likely to be a lower middle income nation by 2047. Go First has found new hope. 3 entities, including the already financially stressed SpiceJet, now seem to be interested in bidding for Go First. And finally, there's a new telecom bill that's likely to be tabled in Parliament today. Will WhatsApp and Zoom make it to the telecom bill? Will they be treated at par with telcos? We found out. All right, and let's start with our first story this morning. Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday on December 17th inaugurated the world's largest workspace called the Surat Diamond Bourse. This, of course, was inaugurated in Surat in Gujarat. Up until now, the Pentagon in the United States was the world's largest ever workspace. And the new Surat Diamond Bourse is even larger than the Pentagon. It's built over an area of 67 lakh square feet and is likely to accommodate as many as 4,200 traders from 175 countries. What are these traders going to do? These traders, of course, are going to visit Surat to buy both polished diamonds as well as rough precious metals and precious stones. Prime Minister Modi has said that the Surat Diamond Bourse is a symbol of strength and determination of a new India. It's likely to employ about 1.5 lakh people, and this becomes an addition to the already 8 lakh people employed in the diamond industry in Surat. In addition to this, there is a custom clearance house for import and export built into the 67 lakh square foot area. Like I mentioned, the Pentagon up until now commanded its position of being the largest office complex for more than 8 decades. And finally, this new bourse, according to Prime Minister Modi, is likely to increase India's share in diamond exports, currently at just 3.5%. Prime Minister wants to see a double-digit contribution in the diamond trade coming all the way from India. In addition to this, it's not just the Diamond Bourse, it's the entire ecosystem, the entire infrastructure that's coming up in and around Surat. In his visit, Prime Minister Modi also inaugurated a new airport terminal at Surat yesterday, and this is likely to handle as many as 1,800 passengers every single day. 1,200 of these would be flying domestic sectors, while 600 or so passengers are likely to fly in and fly out of this new terminal from international locations. And then, of course, Surat's proximity to the ports as well as the new Mumbai and Delhi Expressway passing through Surat, all of this likely to provide the much needed connectivity for Surat to flourish as a diamond export hub. Well, before we move on, let's just listen in to what Prime Minister Modi had to say yesterday at the inauguration of the Surat Diamond Bourse.
आप सभी जानते हैं कि बीते 10 वर्षों में भारत 10वें नंबर की आर्थिक ताकत से ऊपर उठकर दुनिया में 5वें नंबर की आर्थिक शक्ति के रूप में उभरा है। और अब मोदी ने देश को गारंटी दी है कि अपनी तीसरी पारी में भारत दुनिया की टॉप 3 इकोनॉमी में जरूर शामिल होगा। सरकार ने आने वाले 25 साल का भी टारगेट तय किया है। $5 ट्रिलियन का लक्ष्य हो, 10 ट्रिलियन डॉलर का लक्ष्य हो, हम इन सभी पर काम कर रहे हैं। हम देश के एक्सपोर्ट को भी रिकॉर्ड ऊंचाई पर ले जाने के लिए काम कर रहे हैं। ऐसे में सूरत की और विशेषकर सूरत की डायमंड इंडस्ट्री की जिम्मेदारी भी अनेक गुना बढ़ गई है।
Well, Prime Minister Modi there talking at the inauguration of the Surat Diamond Bourse yesterday, and really also in his speech talking about the Modi guarantee that India's growth is likely to come through and diamond export will be one of the bedrocks that India should base its growth on. Well, joining me to discuss this in the studio is my colleague Krishna Kumar. Hi Krishna, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, diamonds seem to be up again in news, and we've seen that the diamond trade in India had up until now taken a bit of a beating, given what's happening in China, given what's happening in the US, and this discretionary spending for expensive consumer purchases has been down in the world. Yeah. New bourse, right time, wrong time?
Right, all I can say is shine like a Surat diamond. That's what it's sounding like, because let's face it, before the opening of what is being described as the world's largest workspace, just a day before that, the first flights, international flights from Surat was also inaugurated. So this is a concerted effort at making Surat a diamond hub where people can travel from Surat abroad and people can travel from abroad to Surat straight. They don't have to come to Bombay, they don't have to come to Delhi. They can just fly straight into the diamond hub of India. And this is India trying to take the lead, as you're rightly pointing out, at a time when global demand for diamonds has taken a hit. Mainly because of the way the economies have been in the US and UK and Europe. All the major buyers of diamond, the sales have been down. So Indian diamond industry has been facing a bit of a difficult time, but let's face it, this could just be a blip. At the end of the day, all businesses go through their rough patches, and we're talking about rough diamonds that get, that get value added here in India. So all said and done, there's a long way to go as far as making Surat a global diamond hub, just like a Brussels in Belgium or an Antwerp in Belgium is concerned. So that's why, in fact, a lot of Indian Gujarati diamond exporters have set up bases in Belgium, and they're always in transit between Belgium and India all the time. So in that sense, can we don't have to go to abroad or Belgium or anywhere to make ourselves a global diamond exporter? Right. Can we do it by making Surat world standards? And this is step number one in that, Karthik.
So there are three challenges as I see it right now, Krishna, in the day that we are living in right now. Challenge number one, of course, is this whole supply of rough diamonds and blood diamonds coming in. The rough stones coming in from Russia is something that the world is frowning over, and they don't want to buy diamonds which originated in some form in blood Russia. Right. The number two concern right now, of course, which we've already discussed, is the discretionary spending cut in US and China. Both have been critical markets for India's exports. The third one, an emerging challenge, which is what I feel the Surat Diamond Bourse is likely to give wings to, are the lab-grown diamonds. Now, tell me something. As somebody who can afford diamonds, perhaps, would you ever go in for lab-cut diamonds, lab-generated diamonds, in contrast to the organic ones?
Well, I'm not sure about my individual preference at this end, because a diamond exactly is not my personal favorite, discretionary spending in that scheme of things. But the fact of the matter is that India is trying to, push forward the lab-grown diamonds. Probably because of all the concerns that you mentioned before. One is the fact that the supply of diamonds is down, incidentally, and even as supply is down, demand is down as well. So this is a bit of a difficult period for the diamond industry in India, and of course the concerns being raised on the ethics of the diamonds, the morality of the diamonds that have been sourced. All of these. Name one diamond that can solve all of this. A lab-grown diamond. So it's great that India is pushing forward with the strategy of a lab-grown diamond, and India pioneering with the idea of a lab-grown diamond, with the gifting of lab-grown diamond to global leaders and etc. etc. So it is right now too early to talk about whether people will take to lab-grown diamond or not. It is India's job to make sure that people take to lab-grown diamond, considering it's their pioneering innovation, and they want to tell the world that, like, if you have so much concerns about where the diamonds come from, guess where this one comes from?
Made in India, made in a lab. Well, I think Prime Minister
yeah.
Modi definitely there making a statement in lab-grown diamonds when he gifted one to Jill Biden in his maiden visit this year to the US. So, of course, I mean, the India diamond industry wanting to shine again. Will it find a market, and which produce of India's diamond market will actually find buyers nationally and internationally is something that we'll have to wait and watch for. And the Surat Diamond Bourse there definitely adding a glimmer of hope in a sort of troubled diamond export scenario that we are faced with right now. With that, it's time to move into a very short break. We'll be back with more stories right here on Business Plus.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, the US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Jyotiraditya Scindia is also facing a litmus test.
There have been corruption charges against all the chief ministers or towering leaders who were rich, but this is not the case with Scindia. So the point is that in modern times, when the society is looking up to good leaders, so Jyotiraditya Scindia could be one of them.
As far as Jyotiraditya Scindia is concerned, even if the BJP loses, Jyotiraditya Scindia will be around for at least another 2 decades. He is young and he has the ability to come back.
This and more streaming now on the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
They picked my husband. He was tortured there for 2 years. He was enforced disappeared. We had no idea where he is. Within 15 minutes, we got the information that the whole area is surrounded by Pakistan Army. I came out from that in disguise, and after 5 to 6 hours, I was in Kandahar. I don't have any message for Pakistan. There is no politician in Pakistan. They are puppets of Pakistan Army.
Streaming now. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching Business Plus right here on News 9 Live, and there's another story that's making headlines, and in fact it did make headlines over the weekend when the aspirations of India being a developed economy by 2047, India being in a race to compete against US and China, and India's much famed, talked about Amrit Kal in fact got questioned by none other than Raghuram Rajan, former RBI governor, as well as the former chief economic advisor to Government of India. And he's saying that even if India continues to grow at 6% per annum by 2047, that's another 24 years or so from now, India is still likely to be in the middle income trap. In fact, he's saying it's not just the middle income trap, it is likely to be the lower middle income trap that India will be in. Krishna, what's going on here?
Imagine, just 48 hours before this, or less than 48 hours before that, we heard Raghuram Rajan say people in Noida and Gurugram are living in the first world.
First world.
They're dealing with first world issues. So interesting analogy is making, probably alluding to the fact that there are parts of India where if you're staying and you're living and you're looking at it, you'll be like, where is the problem? We are, this is as good as a Singapore or as good as any of the other cities. Whatever you travel and buy from the Singapore is available here in Noida or in Gurugram, from health food to just about anything that you feel like. So, and while talking about that, but also talking about the fact, the macroeconomic fundamentals pointing to the fact that even with a 6% GDP growth, we will remain that. It basically means, from the way I interpret it at least, he's talking about a huge wealth gap, a huge gap in terms of development between certain pockets of India and India as a whole. And for long, Karthik, we've been talking about the fact that, you don't talk about the fact that why India is not doing double-digit growth. But of course, we had 3 years of the pandemic, and of course, through the pandemic and post the pandemic, we've had faster growth rates as compared to anybody else. But we have to make up for what we lost over the last couple of decades in terms of
Krishna,
growth.
my point is numbers don't lie. And if we were to just look at numbers as they exist, what are the projections? Even if India continues to grow at 6%, and incidentally, in the last 2 quarters, we've grown much faster than that.
Yes.
And even this year, the estimated growth projection of 6.5 has been revised by RBI to take it up to 7%. But I'm saying pessimistically or realistically, even if you were to look at a 6% growth rate, Rule of 72 suggests that every 12 years rather, your GDP size is going to double. Now, right now, we should hopefully close FY24 at, let's say, $4 trillion, right? $4 trillion, 12 years from now, 2036, we are looking at a size of $8 trillion. Another 12 years, if we continue to grow at 6%, we are looking perhaps, by 2048, if not 2047, we are looking at India's economy to be in the vicinity of about $16-17 trillion, right? $16-17 trillion is actually smaller than China's economy right now. China's economy size is at about 18 trillion. Now, if you were to discount this growth rate over inflation of the same, let's say 6.5%, 5%, are we really talking about growth by 2047?
You're talking about it as if it's compounded annual growth rate, Karthik. The only question here is that will India continue to grow only in the 6 to 7% target range going forward for the next 10, 15 or 20 years? My question here is that what will happen to India once it's over and done with all the post-pandemic stress and ends up being able to notch double-digit growth rate at some stage? Because let's face it, for China to get to the $18 trillion number today, it was doing double-digit growth rates for over a decade.
Absolutely.
So India is waiting for that decade where it will notch up double-digit growth, and we're all working towards that. From everything from making everything in India to increasing our exports, the idea is that we push ourselves towards 9-10% growth rates and keep it at that for about 5 to 10 years, and then it's a different story altogether.
Yeah, sure. But let's also look at something else that Raghuram Rajan has pointed to. And again, interesting there, that if India's economy was to quadruple in the next 20 years, and the same assumption was to hold true even for India's per capita income, which is in the range of about $2,500 right now, if that were to contribute to about $10,000 in the next 20 years or so, even that doesn't cut it, because inflation, even if you're growing at double digits, inflation is also going at least 5%, 6% year on year. So even at 10,000 per capita income, the concern Raghuram Rajan is pointing out is that India will actually suffer on 2 accounts. One, of course, is being still in the lower middle income trap. The second also being that with population perhaps not continuing to grow as fast as it has grown over the last 20 years, the demographic dividend will actually start becoming a burden, because we will perhaps age faster than we get richer. So we are going to be an older economy first and a richer economy much later. Some genuine concerns, I think.
There are genuine concerns over here because let's face it, even when you talk about population, India doesn't have the same population problem between the north and the south.
Yeah.
The south has a declining population, or rather degrowing population, whereas the north continues to grow as if nothing else has affected it. So in that sense, to even put a composite picture of India regarding the demographic dividend and population, the growing old you're talking about, Karthik, is already happening in the south of India.
Yeah.
You're seeing more and more people dependent on lesser and lesser young people, just like how Japan eventually ended up becoming.
The point is, if we are becoming an older economy, and if you're becoming an economy which is largely driven by older people, or an economy which is taking care of older people, retired people, aging people, how do you grow at double digit? And hence the whole question of a faster or a China-like last decade growth rate for India seems a bit elusive.
Right. But that only question is, how well do you develop that part of India which is growing in terms of population but not growing in terms of economy? You have the south of India that is growing in terms of economy, continuing to notch up great numbers, continuing to be the largest contributors to the country's GDP. But of course, they are a growing, aging population. So what my concern, I would share that concern, is that how do we balance this out? How do we make sure we bring back the kind of growth that you're witnessing in the south and the kind of economies and the per capita GDPs? If you take a look at the per capita GDP in the country, the top 4 states, it's Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, it's the same usual suspects when it comes to high per capita GDP and high GDP. How do we transfer that growth over here? And how do we ensure that the demographic disadvantages the South will face eventually can be mitigated with? So that is a challenge that India will have to deal with. I always believe that India is multiple Indias always thrown in together. We'll have to take our strengths from somewhere and reduce our weaknesses in certain places. But the concerns are genuine. How well we deal with these challenges, I mean, that's anybody's guess.
All right, and in the same breath, also news coming in, Arvind Panagaria, former Chief Economic Advisor to Government of India and former member Niti Aayog, is also coming on record. In fact, at the same time, when Raghuram Rajan is raising questions on India's real growth, if not just pure GDP, economic growth and size of the economy, Arvind Panagaria coming out and saying that India is likely to be the much famed, much talked about $5 trillion economy as early as 2026. Well, let's see how those numbers really stack up, but let's move on for now. And moving on to a corporate story. And this one has been doing rounds in India since the first week of May, 2nd May to be precise, when Go First went in for voluntary insolvency to NCLT. And on 21st November, finally, months after multiple deliberations and rounds, it did not find a bidder. News emerging again over the weekend and in papers this morning now suggesting that there could be as many as 3 potential bidders or suitors who are likely to express interest. They haven't yet officially expressed interest but are likely to come in the fray to take on Go First and take it back to the skies. Who are these 3? Well, one happens to be a Sharjah-based Sky One, a company which has been in cargo and logistics, but a small player in the aviation sector globally. There's another one called Safric. Safric is an Africa-based investment firm, not got anything to do yet with aviation. And surprise, surprise, there is a third player as well. The third player seems to be a player already facing financial crunch on its own ability to stay in the skies. We're talking about SpiceJet. So, Krishna, we are ending the year, and just as we thought that the game is over for Go First is gone. And there was an extension of 60 days made by the NCLAT in the first week of December, giving it extension to liquidate or find another bidder by the first week of February. We've got another surprise. Sajjan Jindal decided to back out, and Naveen Jindal decided, to back out, and now we've got SpiceJet and 2 other fringe players in the world coming in.
Right. Interesting that SpiceJet is going for it, as you're rightly pointing out, because SpiceJet has its own. SpiceJet has managed to more than halve its losses from over 800 crore rupees to just over 400 crore rupees, and the fact that they are also offering fresh equity and listing themselves on the National Stock Exchange has certainly done well for the SpiceJet stock. I'd be curious to know how investors in SpiceJet react to the fact that they are now in talks to pick up stake in Go First. But yeah. all of this means only one thing for me as a consumer, Karthik, and that is we need at least one more airline in the skies for India's domestic civil aviation. We'll need more and more. Yes, we have an Akasa Air that's just come in, but we need larger players, more players in the space so that there is rationalization in terms of ticket prices. And also, there's enough flights available. You're talking about a huge country, still largely untapped civil aviation market. So any news about an airline carrier, either it's down or if it's going to add to its fleet, any more flights up in the skies in India is good news for me. The only question here is that how soon will this materialize? Because we've seen months of a career already of an airline carrier which has been down, which has been waiting for clearance. There's so many issues, like you're talking about everything from NCLAT to potential bidders backing out. The way I look at it is that I'm going to wait for somebody to sign on that dotted line and then breathe a sigh of relief.
So I think the challenge, Krishna, really is that how do you ascribe value to an airline which has been grounded for the last 9 years and has absolutely next to nil assets on its books and has costs. And these costs, in addition to litigation, liquidation, bidding, etc., also have costs associated to the aircraft being grounded. So every time you are grounded, every time you're not flying, you're actually bleeding, you're losing money. And add to that the Singapore arbitration, in which Go First has actually asked Pratt & Whitney to shell out as much as $1 billion, accruing to all the losses that Go First has had to made on the back of the faulty engines supplied by Pratt & Whitney. Also because Go First, for whatever reason, only went with Pratt & Whitney engines and did not diversify itself. But the fact is that there is litigation on. There is a faulty engine problem. Right. Replacing those engines quickly, easily, in a low-cost manner for a low-cost airline is unlikely to happen. And at a time like this, any bidder wanting to come and pick up the airline, in addition to getting a brand name and getting a license, what do you get out of it?
Right. You're telling me all the reasons why Jindal Power backed out.
Pretty much.
It's precisely why any bidder, for Go First they were like, oh, it's an airline. India is a great civil aviation market. Why not? What is the harm in buying an airline? Oh, hold on a second. This is a grounded airline. It doesn't even have a fleet anymore that it owns. It doesn't have a functioning engine that, without any doubt, there are so many questions regarding Go First. But the fact of the matter is that, like you rightly pointed out, there is a brand called Go First. People have taken flights on Go First. So the question is that, can you make something out of scrap? If Go First is at this stage scrap metal, people, there are turnaround stars that are there in all kinds of businesses where they take scrap and make something much more out of it. Here is hoping that, against all odds, that somebody, if three more
finds value in it.
Yeah, three more bidders are interested in today's day, at this date. It's a big deal because they could have easily looked at the reasons why the previous bidders backed out and said that, like, hey, I don't see value in it, I'm done with it. But two international players and one local player already struggling with their own financial issues, if they are interested, there's got to be some value in it, Karthik, that we are not seeing sitting here in these studios.
Well, let's hope the value is more than just paper value, getting to understand how big is the hole that they may have to burn in their pocket if they were to go ahead and either buy
how deep their pockets are.
And how deep their pockets are, sure. Well, let's move on for now and move on to an important story that we'll be tracking all through today, and this is the new telecommunications bill. Telecom Bill 2023 is likely to be tabled in Parliament today. What should one expect? There were, of course, reports originally coming out before the bill was actually cleared by the cabinet in its original draft format in the month of August this year, that all OTT communication platforms, and by OTT here, mind you, I don't mean Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Hotstar, etc. All over-the-top internet-based communication services, including WhatsApp calls, video calls on Zoom, Skype, etc. All of these would be under the ambit of the new telecom bill and would have to play by the same rules that telecom players like Airtel, Jio, Vodafone Idea, etc. have to abide by. But that does not seem to be the case anymore. In a new development which is being reported in papers, at least this morning, the new telecom bill is unlikely to actually include these OTT communication platforms under its ambit. In addition to that, there is also this ongoing tussle between telecom players wanting the real OTT players, which now I'll talk about, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, Hotstar, etc., to bear the cost of the CDN, the content distribution network, because these are the platforms on which consumers are actually binging and consuming data in hordes, which is very, very cheap in India. Would this be included in the new telecom bill or not? We don't know just as yet, but yeah, the bill is likely to be tabled in Parliament today. Krishna, what are you expecting from the bill?
Before we go any further, let's talk about why is this bill being introduced and what this bill will replace. It will replace the Indian Telegraph Act. Guess how old that Indian Telegraph Act is? 138 years old. So the new telecommunications bill is, at the end of the day, is a much needed move at this stage, because literally the way communications, technology and telecommunications have been growing in the last decade or two, we cannot possibly have a 138-year-old Indian Telegraph Act.
Time for change.
Oh my God, long time. This should have been done a decade ago, if not even before that. Finally, we're doing this. And the concerns you're talking about, the one other concern that you didn't mention was the fact that this bill also seeks to limit the powers of the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, or TRAI, and that has raised concerns among industry players.
But limiting powers of the regulator and giving more power to the government, well, that is the fine print that I think we'll have to watch out for in the new telecom bill. And as soon as it gets tabled, we will of course bring you more details. But up next, watch News 9 Plus's in-depth analysis of the rise in illegal immigration from India to US, the UK and to Canada. Take a look at this documentary.
उन्होंने मुझे बताया था कि आप चिंता मत करो, मैं आपको भरोसा दिलाता हूँ, फिर ये मेरा परिवार सब खत्म हो गया।
In a disturbing discovery on the Minnesota-Canada border, police found the bodies of 4 family members who they say froze to death.
Sent shockwaves across 2 continents and left many people asking a simple question: why?
प्रवीण भाई ने मुझे बताया था कि मैं घूमने के लिए, मेरा वीज़ा आया है कनाडा का, तो मैं घूमने के लिए जा रहा हूँ। फिर बाद में जो उन्होंने मुझे बताया कि मेरी निकुल से बात हुई है और वो मुझे यहाँ से अमेरिका क्रॉसिंग करवाना का बोल रहा था। तो 2-3 दिन बाद प्रवीण भाई का फ़ोन आया और वो बोले कि यहाँ पे जो सचिन है उनका फ़ोन आया था, तो वो बोल रहा है कि यहाँ से लाइन क्लियर नहीं हो रही, तो अभी आपको बोट में जाना पड़ेगा। फिर मैंने निकुल को फ़ोन किया कि आप, अपनी बात तो हुई है टैक्सी में, तो ऐसे बोट में ले जाएगा तो हमको नहीं जाना है, जो जहाँ से लाया था वहाँ छोड़ दे। तो वो निकुल बोला कि प्रवीण भाई को बात हो गई है और 6-7 मिनट का रास्ता है, जब आप आंखें पलक के बंद करोगे तब वहाँ पे पहुँच जाओगे। लेकिन जब बैठे तब मेरी भतीजी का फ़ोन मेरे पे आया था और वो बोल रही थी कि अंकल मैं जब बोट में बैठ गए और वो बोट है वो जो बार बार बंद हो जाती है, तभी मैंने उनको पूछने की कोशिश की कि कैसे होता है, कैसे क्यों बंद हो जाती है, लेकिन तभी फ़ोन मेरा कट गया था और फिर मुझे कुछ उसको कांटेक्ट नहीं हुआ है। फिर सुबह में तो न्यूज़ द्वारा, मीडिया द्वारा मुझे पता चला कि वो बोट में से 4 गुजराती लोग थे, ऐसा हुआ है, फिर मालूम पड़ा।